Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. As part of our coverage of ATX Television Festival Season 8, I was lucky enough to chat with Graham Yost. You know him as the creator and EP of shows like Justified and Boomtown, or as a writer and EP over on Sneaky Pete, or maybe you know him from a little movie called Speed. Either way, it's a great chat about Elmore Leonard, adapting shows, canceled pilots, and more. I hope you enjoy.
So this is Les Weiler from the TV Dudes. We're a local Austin podcast. We've done TV Crit once a week for about 8 years, and twice a week we do interviews with creators, showrunners, talent. I'm sitting here with Graham Yost, who folks might know from shows like Sneaky Pete or Justified or Speed. Can you talk a bit about your involvement with ATX Television Fest? How you got on board here?
So, Caitlin and Emily came to me, it's got to be 6 years ago now, something like that. And I was working on Justified, and they came in and they knew what they could pitch would hook me, which was a Hey Dude reunion. And I said, okay, I'll do what I can, and I'll help you, and I'm in. And so Connie, my wife, came with me, and we loved the festival. We loved Caitlin and Emily, so we got to know them. It was fun doing a Hey Dude reunion. I think we did a couple one Justified thing, and they put me on another panel. And it's just an amazing festival. And they became friends. So when they come to California, we live not in LA, but up in Monterey. They'll stop by and spend the night and ride horses with my wife. And, so they've become a part of our lives.
Looking back on it, I remember seeing Speed in the theater and feeling like it was somehow different than action movies I'd seen prior. And I didn't know enough about the language of film or screenwriting to know exactly what was so immensely satisfying about it. But can you talk about the feeling you had when you finished that script and on into production? Did you kind of know you had something special there?
I hoped I did. It was an idea that it had an interesting gestation. My father, who had a TV show in Canada all about movies, had heard about a Kurosawa script about a bus that couldn't slow down. A train that couldn't slow down or to blow up, and he got that wrong. I think he just imagined that it would blow up. It's just they can't get to the brakes, and that became the movie Runaway Train. And I saw that, and I came out and I thought, boy, it'd be better if it was a bus. But that stuck in my head for a long time. It was one of those ideas that was just, someday I'll write that. Someday I'll think about that. And then I had a break of time after I finished working on, perhaps my greatest credit, Hey Dude, for Nickelodeon, and before I started working in Half Hour in LA. But at any rate, I felt that if you could do a really great suspense film, and it's interesting that Speed is thought of as part of the action genre, because there's a bad guy and stuff blows up and
stuff
everything.
Blows up, I think, is what makes it sit there for me.
Yeah, but it's really it's a suspense film, and to a degree, it's a disaster film. So you've got this group of people, and it's led by the cop, and then the forced by circumstance bus driver, Sandra Bullock. They're confronted by a situation which is a disaster that they have to somehow try to survive. But then there's a bad guy. So it's a mixture in many ways of genres. But I think the big thing is that it had that ridiculously high concept that was ludicrous. And, there were bits in the script where I put things in the writer's room world, we call it hang a lantern on something. If you know that it's weird and it's doesn't make a lot of sense, you have someone say, this is weird and this doesn't make sense. But the audience went with it. Jan de Bont shot it perfectly, and Keanu and Sandra Bullock were perfect, and it was one of those things that all came together. I will say that I knew that it was going to change my life the first time I saw it, and it was in a small theater at the Fox lot. Dennis Hopper was seeing it for the first time that day too, and it was the moment where Jack Traven, our hero, jumps from the Jaguar that he has, commandeered, jumps from that onto the bus. And as soon as that happened, I went, wow, my life is going to change. Because I just could tell the way Jan had shot it, the way the performances were, the way it was cut, the music and everything, that it was really exciting. And I thought, it's a really good film. I didn't know if it would become a hit.
Yeah.
And because you never know.
Yeah, those two things don't
No.
necessarily pair. When it came time to do Justified, I know why people love Elmore Leonard, but what brought you to adapt and do Justified?
You know, it was one of those accidents of life that, not an accident. A friend and I had rewritten a pilot at Sony. It didn't go forward. Sony owed me one more script. And we were trying to come up with something. They weren't thrilled about an idea I had, which it was an alien invasion thing. But at any rate, they sent me that novella. And
Was that Fire in the Hole?
Fire in the Hole,
Yeah.
which Elmore wrote not kind of as a lark, but he wrote it as I think it was part of an ebook release or something.
Oh.
It was just I'll do this for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I've been a big fan of Elmore's for a long time, so that fit. And I loved the fact that it was not set in L.A., New York, or Miami. And I loved Raylan. I'd known him from writing The Rap, and there was something even in Pronto. There's something even cooler about him in that story. So it was, again, one of those things. I know we could do something that's really good. I don't know if people are going to want to watch it.
Yeah.
But the thing about Elmore was I'd seen adaptations of his stuff that just hadn't worked. But then I saw what Scott Frank did in Out of Sight, when he adapted that, and then when he adapted Get Shorty. And I've gotten to know Scott over the years. We were together at Elmore's funeral, that kind of thing. But what I loved about his versions, and I remember at that point not ever thinking I would ever adapt Elmore Leonard, but I thought, he let Elmore be Elmore. He used, even if he didn't use actual dialogue from the books, his dialogue was exactly like Elmore's, which is, and that's a certain trick. In Out of Sight, the scene between Jack Foley and Karen Sisko in the trunk of the car, where they meet cute and they start this relationship. Just we're talking about movies. That's the kind of thing I love from Elmore, and I thought we had a shot at doing something like that in the show.
Out of Sight blew me away when I saw that in the theater. I'll never forget Rames tossing him the can of soda and or beer, and him just missing it. Like, it just flies right off the balcony. And it's like, it was just such a great character moment. You knew these two friends. You knew who they were and their relationship right there. Your newest show is Sneaky Pete.
Well, I'm not on that anymore.
Not anymore. Okay.
So, the way this business works, I had been working on a pilot with Fred Golan, and Michael Dinner was going to direct it, and at Fox, and it didn't go forward. And so we had nothing to do. And Sony said, we'd like you to come in on Sneaky Pete. It had been a pilot at CBS, you know, that whole story, and they wanted fresh eyes on it. So I did, with Fred and Michael, we did the first season. We had so much fun that we did the second season, and by the end of the second season, it was, this really isn't our show. I mean, we're proud of what we've done. Loved the cast, loved the stories we could do, but it was sort of, for me, partly it was working out the big cons was starting to make my brain break. And the big con in the second season is a little more wobbly than the one in the first season, although that has its own problems too. There's a certain, building an airplane while you're flying kind of thing, and it's like, we've done that. So unfortunately, after the third season, they got another writing team in, and Amazon has said that's enough. So
when it's your show and you're running it, can you talk a bit about your role and how you are you more hands-on managing the writers' room? Do you like to be on set and see what's happening? How do you define your role at its kind of top level?
Well, I've been incredibly lucky in the shows that I've run, particularly with Boomtown back in early 2000s on NBC, and then with Justified and Sneaky Pete, in that I had great directing producers. working with them. And so John Abnett on Boomtown, and then Michael Dinner on Justified and Sneaky Pete. So the set was taken care of. They hired the directors. They were making sure that everything was running right and that it had the look and the feel of what we've been doing. Honestly, my time is best spent in the writer's room, or writing, or editing. And it feels like, while it's fun to visit the set, I like saying hi to everyone, I rarely do it. With Sneaky Pete, it was odd. I would, because it was shooting in New York and I live in California, I would go, but only, a week here, a week there. But it was during that time, I was actually on the set a lot. So to a certain extent, I got to know the crew and everything on Sneaky almost more than Justified. Justified, the joke was, we'll see him the first day of shooting and the last day of shooting. And maybe right before Christmas, So to me, it's really being in the room.
Oddly, Boomtown has come up in conversation for me probably 6 times in the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
I spoke to Steven Skaya, who's doing Blood and Treasure right now, and they had Javi Guerrero-Marx watch in the writer's room there. And we were talking about, they do a lot of flashback, move timelines, maps, years run through the screen. And I asked, where do you know the breaking point is for the audience for how much information and how to manage that? And the first thing he was like, well, the whole writer's room looked at Javi and went, so what did Boomtown learn on how far you can push an audience on multiple timeline storylines?
Well, apparently Boomtown pushed it too far because it didn't make it past a season and a third.
And so they said it was they got to have kind of a Boomtown class one day of like, all right, this is how you take an audience through. This is what we learned.
We were making it up as we went along, and it was a really fun show to work on. Boomtown was. In many respects, it's still the thing that I'm probably the most proud of. As much as I love Justified was Elmore's show. We were just there serving him, and that's a little overly. I'm not trying to be modest or even humble. Lord knows, ask my wife, but it still was Elmore's world, and the only way that show was going to work is if we kept on referring to that. Now, that said, there's a lot of me in it. There's a lot of Fred Golan, a lot of Michael Dinner, a lot of Tim. Awful lot of Tim, but Boomtown was something that I was really engaged in on a deep level.
Yeah, I don't watch procedural or not procedural. Boomtown was not generally the show I would have watched, and I remember being really captivated by it and surprised at the time. It was one of the shows that kind of started me on what I used to do with liner notes of albums in high school. Like, well, I like this band. They're not going to have an album out for a year. Who's the engineer on it? What other bands do they like? Are they producing other, And
reading those notes, man. We would just listen to the music and who is the engineer? Who's Bob Clearmountain? Who's Felix Pappalardi? Who's whatever. Yeah.
And I tell folks that you can do the same thing on television. That showrunners people like to work with the people that work well with them, and people like to find shows that fit their, whether you write comedy, whether you write drama, whether you can write heist. I used to watch Hustle on the UK show Hustle and think, every episode, at some point your brain has to pop. Yeah. Like, how do you write this many heists?
Yeah, I didn't watch Hustle, and that just terrifies me.
I want to say in one season they ran a thing at the end that was like, send in your best heists. And I was like, oh God, they're just crowdsourcing from the UK, like, please tell us something new to steal.
Yeah.
In the course of your career, when you've had the opportunity, I'm assuming you have favorite people that you like to work with. Do you have any favorite project that was like, oh, we've got a dream team here, but it fizzled?
Yeah, there've been a couple. It's fun. I was doing a panel yesterday about the pilot process, and we were all sharing our, what's your number, which is how many pilot scripts have you written that haven't gone forward, and then what's your second number, which is how many pilots have been shot that are
vanished now.
Yeah. And there have been a few along the way. There was one while we were doing Justified. Taylor Elmore, who works, he's the showrunner, I think, on Blood and Treasure. He came up with an idea to do a show set on an aircraft carrier, which was very ambitious. Michael Dinner signed on. I signed on. We were sort of godfathering him. Michael would direct it if it went forward. Fox bought it. Was very enthusiastic. It was just a brilliant script. It's really one of the best pilots I've ever read. And we went deep into the casting process. My old friend Michael T. Williamson was cast. Gina Rodriguez was cast. We couldn't find the lead. And then the Navy said they weren't going to help us. And that hurt a lot.
Yeah.
But we had sets built. We spent millions of dollars and not a frame was shot before it was finally canceled. And that was a heartbreak. But it was also, we looked at each other and was like, wow, we really dodged a bullet. That would have been such a difficult show to do. To do, naval aviators, do planes taking off, doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we would have figured out a way, but it would have been incredibly difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, and the stakes the money would have gotten higher and higher. The stakes would have gotten higher as that season went on. Well, thank you so much for taking out time this morning.
You got it.
To talk to me. It's just been really great. I do another podcast that's just on one season canceled gyms. That's how I first met Hobby, was talking about Middleman.
Middleman,
And now I'm interviewing Nimick and Applebaum and Rosenberg for Happy Town from ABC. But
that's sad duty on your part, but good. But
my wife is really tired of me dragging her through shows.
Oh my God!
Where she gets to a season finale and goes, "But I care about these people now. Is this another one of your one season?"
For example, I have yet to watch the final episode of Terriers because I love that show so much. I don't want it to be over. And
my co-host Randy did. That's how I actually got the idea to do the one season show. Is he did a thing called Beach Cop Detectives that went through Terriers. That's his hands down favorite television show.
One of the best opening title songs.
Oh my God!
Every time I would just that's the mark of a great opening title is that you watch it every time
and just smile every time. Yeah. You never fast forward it. Yeah, never skip intro that. Thank you so much.
You got it, man. Take care.
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast and a member of the Permanent Record Podcast Network. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, please go to patreon.com/TVDudes. You can like us on Facebook and Twitter at TV Dudes, and help us out on iTunes by giving us a 5-star rating and writing a review. To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com and permanentrcrd.com. I'm Grant Davis. Thanks for listening.